Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of If It Isn't Love podcast. I am your host, Donisha.
And I'm your co-host, JL. What's in?
And we are happy to be back. We came back for a second and then we took a break. Rest is really important. And I think that last year clearly gave us a lot of time to rest and relax and recuperate. 2020 was that. But that's actually what birthed this podcast. But I think that as the world is starting to open back up, specifically if you live in the United States, if you live in Texas, and so we're kind of being catapulted in a lot of arenas and areas back into normalcy, whatever that is. And I think, at least for me, I'm really fighting against some of that and still trying to normalize some of the rest practices that I learned. Do you not agree?
You're trying to fight against what now?
Everything going back to normal, like 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay. I'm not here for it. Like, clearly I have to go to work. So I have to go into the office. Like, that working from home is, and especially like 100% is not a thing anymore for me. But I don't want to ever be back in a space where I am feeling like I'm forced to produce like I was previously, right? And it doesn't mean I don't work. It doesn't mean I don't do things, but I'm just a lot more specific. I feel like I can still get as much done as I did, but I want to be very thoughtful about rest, which is kind of what we're talking about today. But I said all that just to say that's why we took a break. But I also want to say, if we're gonna, we have this conversation, if we are going to continue on and do this podcast, then we have to be dedicated in making sure we're preparing for it, that we put out episodes. I actually have had people like, where your episodes at? So this is us getting back into it. Happy July, halfway through 2021. Excited. How are you today?
I'm still coming down off the melatonin, but I'm good. I'm glad I'm getting more sleep. I've been doing a whole lot, and this past week was a big week, like busy week. That's what I mean by that. So it's just been mainly trying to catch up on sleep. So yesterday I felt like I did nothing, even though technically I did. I said, well, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
In our topic and whatnot. But overall, I am feeling pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. And we have a little bit of a different setup. So we're still in our apartment. That's where we record always. So we were formerly at the, I don't know, is it a bar?
Like an island?
It's not an island because it's next to a wall. It'd have to have nothing. It's a peninsula. Peninsula, maybe. Possibly. I know island. What all this? Okay.
Weirdo.
And so we're just trying to figure out something different. So now we're at our dining room table. That's our balcony and living room, all that. So it's a little different. I actually like this setup. I definitely am in favor of the setup too, that we don't have to bring like the table. I liked the table before, but that was better for the other apartment. It doesn't necessarily fit this space. But so let us know if you like this new setup. So we're combing over topics, right? And we do, if you follow us and you listen to us, we do hot topics and stuff like that. But I really want to make sure that our podcast is geared towards more like, we have these topics, they're about relationship and things like that. Before I get into the topic today, I know everybody's going to be like, okay, how's the wedding stuff going? So I thought about that. And what I think we're going to do is it's not that we're not going to talk about wedding stuff on the podcast. We might have specific topics that are around the wedding. I actually have some ideas for some topics and segments that I want to introduce on this last half of the year or of the season of the podcast. But we're going to really put a lot of our wedding content on our Instagram. So I was thinking about doing something called like Wedding Wednesdays, where we'll, in some format, whether it be a live or a IGTV video or something, where we'll give you more detailed updates and parts of where we are in our wedding planning. So if you're not already make sure that you're following us on Instagram at If It Isn't Love Podcast. And then you can get all of that wedding tea that we will be dishing. But I mean, as just a quick update, we have solidified our date. We solidified our venue. And I will say it's the only venue we saw, but it's perfect.
It's honestly the only venue we kind of needed to see.
Yeah.
Like, I love it.
Yeah.
And I loved it from its pictures, but, and I love it for its location as well. So it's like,
yeah.
It was kind of one of those, like, I think our wedding planner, Sheraton, she definitely said you probably should have waited last to view this one or something like that.
Because it's going to be harder because you're going to pit everything against this one. And I will say it is one of those where in the pictures and in the videos online, it was beautiful. And to be drawn to a space where you're like, this is amazing based on the pictures. And then most times when you see stuff, it is maybe not as amazing or just as, it was more beautiful and amazing in person. Like truly the videos and pictures could not capture.
Yeah.
And that's because they were like, it was amazing. So I am so excited. So we were able to put our deposit down. So it is definitely our venue. So I'm excited about that. We have our wedding planner. And so now we are at the point where we're starting to gather things for our wedding party, and get them in on things and looking for attire. I am, our wedding planner is helping me schedule bridal dress scenes or whatever. And I bought my mom's plane ticket so that she can come here with me next month. So that's where we are. Oh, and engagement photo stuff. We're working on that. So yeah, for the details of that, just follow us on If It Isn't Love Podcast on Instagram. That's where we're going to be giving more of that content. And I'm excited. I think it's going to be exciting. Okay. So today's topic actually came to me today. I wanted to talk about, because we've both been working on organizing ourselves and all of these types of things and getting things in order as we both have, as a lot is happening, right? We're getting married. We you're in school, like he's taking classes, new design classes. I'm starting a new job. We got a lot happening. And so I was like talking about organizing. Anybody who knows me knows that I love a structure, a schedule, a plan, a to-do. I live for it. My friend right here, not as much. However, I think that with so many new things happening in your life and trying to find balance and things like that, it was, there's a saying that necessity breeds invention. So oftentimes we do stuff because it is necessary. And I think so many things have been changing that you have seen, like, all right, I'm going to have more structure in how I do things. And from that idea, I started thinking about like why you came to that point, because my man's over here had been feeling some pressure from outside people and stuff like that in terms of instituting boundaries. So I wanted to talk about boundaries instead, because I thought that is a very important topic. And I think it's such a good, it can go everywhere, right? In terms of your professional boundaries. And if I'm honest, I've been dealing a lot with that. For me, when that came to mind, it really encapsulated what I had been feeling, like when I was talking to you about what was going on at work and stuff like that. And really just instituting boundaries professionally, relationally, like in our relationship, but as well as in like our familiar relationships and friendships, right? And things like that, and instituting boundaries. So I thought that was a really interesting, as that you instituting boundaries, that's how you moved over. No. Just messing like, so I thought it was a really interesting topic, because I think that we live in a society that is often boundaryless. Yeah. Or very low on boundaries. And sometimes people view you instituting boundaries as disrespect, as instead of just being healthy. Like it is healthy to have boundaries.
Or
and
they take it personally.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm a person, and this is my own philosophy, because I know some people will be like, well, my health and my mental health and my health overall above all else. And I believe that, but I also believe that it's really important oftentimes, and especially in the beginning when you're instituting a new boundary, to communicate that to those around you that are important to you so that they have more opportunity to not take it personally. Now, if you explain it and they still opt to take it personally, and it doesn't mean that you have to change it if they don't get it. Right. But I do think it's important to explain it, because if we're used to doing things all the time and we're doing things this way, and then I'm like, this is really pushing a boundary, and maybe I've just allowed something to happen and I was uncomfortable with it, and then I make a decision to say, I'm actually not comfortable with this and I want to institute a boundary, and I just do it and I don't communicate to the person, it's not fair to them, that because then they're thinking something is wrong,
right? As
opposed to me just saying like, you know what, I'm really not comfortable with this, and I know we've done it for however long. I don't care if it's been your whole life, but I'm not comfortable with it. And that the whole life will definitely, when it comes to like familial boundaries, like right. with your, I have to do that often with my mom. Like, I get it. I don't enjoy it though. And now I feel empowered to share that.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be a part of our relationship anymore. And so I'm setting that boundary, and you cannot cross it. And if you try, I will stop you at the border every time.
I think that's like been my issue, like for a long time. Like I've always been the person who's always the go-to person on a lot of stuff. So, and it's like I never really give my time or myself time to really do stuff that I want to do. And then on top of that, when you were talking about structure and everything like that, like normally, yeah, like I'm not the most structured person even for myself. So like even like throughout most of my life, like I was told to be here. I need to be at this book signing. I need to be at this class. I need to be this place and that place. So when it came time for me to like, even when I was like selecting classes for like when I was in college and everything like that, I was like, I don't really, this is not necessarily my area. So now like I'm 35 and everything like that, and I feel like I'm tired. Like I'm tired of being like always having to be available for everybody except for myself or except for my relationship and stuff. So like my mom recommended her VPA, which is a virtual personal assistant, to take over some stuff for me. Like I don't do well with a calendar. Like I try to keep up with it as much as possible, but I need help. Like that, I think understanding like boundaries is also understanding that sometimes you need help to enforce those boundaries. Cause like, I've always been like, even in design and everything like that, I've always been, that person, like if I'm not doing it, nobody, like I don't trust anybody else to do it for me. And I need to get out of that a lot more. So I started instituting a lot more boundaries, but at the one thing that really pushed it for me, it wasn't necessarily just the frustration of my calendar and all that stuff. One of my friends, she contacted me about, it was some sort of design stuff. And like, I wasn't able, like, I'm always the person who says, yeah, I can do that, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 without really checking whether I can really do it or not within a time frame. And I didn't say anything, or I didn't really put it out there that I would do it or anything like that. But she just kept blowing my phone up, but I'm not checking Facebook Messenger and everything like that. And she literally got mad at me and everything like that. I'm like, it says, I've told people, including her, not to message me on Facebook Messenger especially about business stuff, because I don't have it on my phone. Like I've had it, but even the notifications were turned off and stuff like that. So I'm like, you're getting mad at me for something that I told you not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I was like, you know what? I can't take this anymore. Like, there's certain boundaries that I definitely need to start having a lot more of and actually start following through with, because I allow too many allowances for that. So that's where that kind of birthed from. And I mean, it's been hard and a little bit out of my comfort zone to really try to enforce it, because like, I'm normally the nice, happy guy and everything like that. I don't want to be the person like, I'm not talking about this today. I'm not doing this with you today. This is the weekend. I'm shifting this. This is going to have to wait until Tuesday or something like that. Is definitely out of my comfort zone, but at the same time, like, I'm getting more and more used to like having that boundary set at least.
And I think that being out of your comfort zone doesn't mean that you're the bad guy now. And I think that's probably something that internally you'll have to cipher through to say, okay, because I say no, it doesn't make me the bad guy, or because I set these boundaries. It's like like federal buildings. We're recording today, Sunday is 4th of July. So they all honor the holiday tomorrow, July 5th. Mm-hmm. They are closed. There's no feeling about it. We are closed. You can email the courthouse. You can do all the things you want to do. They're not going to be open. They will take your request Tuesday when they're available within the methods of contact that they have set. Mm-hmm. That's it. And if you don't do it that way, you miss out. And that's it. And so there's no feeling. It is just fine. You can email me on Saturday, because I'm a person that sometimes like I do it because that's when I'm free. Mm-hmm. Fine. Knowing that I won't get a response until then. And yes, people will have reactions. They will. And I 100% understand you in terms of people asking you to do things on platforms that you don't normally engage in. And I tell people, there are things, I know people send me stuff and they're like, oh, I sent you that. Oh, I didn't read that. I just hate notifications. And so I can open a messenger, and if I see a video and I'm not in the space to watch it, it means I opened it, and I probably am not going to return to it because there was nothing that made me think like, oh, I gotta get back to this. And if you if you have real questions for me, there are so many more structured ways to contact me that I can reply to for specific requests, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's when it's friends, you have my actual phone number, and then I can actually respond to you if that's the question. And then if it's a business inquiry, I think sometimes, and I'm not saying this is you in that situation, but sometimes if we have acquiesced, if we have indulged a person when they have crossed the line, and we've helped them. So it's like, oh yeah, she knows it's supposed to be this, but I've helped her this way, and they know they can loop around. Mm-hmm. So they're not doing the formal way of doing this business request. And if they do it that way, just say, I don't respond to business requests in this way. Sometimes people will get mad, and that's part of it. And it is. My thing is, but if I have explained it to you and I have guided you in the proper way to go about getting done what you need to be done, especially when it's something professional, right? You want to utilize my professional services, even though we have a personal relationship. Mm-hmm. And those interactions are always tricky to navigate.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize, like, I'm the person that I would rather err on the side of treat me like you would any customer.
Right.
If I'm going to utilize your services, I'm going to go to you not because you're my friend, I want you to hook me up. I feel like the only person I might interact with in that space is you. Like, I'm not going to email the thing. But I know it's different.
I think when it comes to that, like, okay, so the reason, it's not just because like there's many reasons why I don't check those messages or stuff like that for business. One, I get a lot of story replies and I get a lot of messages throughout the day. Like people just messaging me like miscellaneous stuff like play this Thug Life game and stuff like that.
Hey?
Right. Or stuff like that.
What's that?
Farmville.
Yeah, Farmville.
Or whatever. No yeah, they like send me silly stuff like that. So half of the time I'm thinking it's nothing. And I'm like, if it's something that is that important, your stuff is getting pushed down like every hour.
Right.
So it's not like me being high and mighty or feeling like, you know, like I've gotten a lot of times where like people feel like I'm like, being bougie or something like that, or being over like high and mighty and everything like that. I'm like, that's not the case. Like, if you want me to pay attention to what is going on that's important as far as business, you need to do that in a correct way. Also, if you email it, there's more than one set of eyes looking at this email.
Right.
So, because like, I mean, I'll be honest, like, I'm not sure if it was just because of COVID or if like over time, like, you know, age and everything like that, but I can't rely on my memory as much. So I can't rely on the fact that I'm going to have to go back through these messages, like scroll all the way to the top.
Right.
And try to view your instructions for whatever business project this is.
Right.
I hate having to do that, like scroll all the way. Like I even had to get on my mom about that. Like, don't send this to me in a message. Send this to me in an email so I can always refer back to it.
Right.
There's a reason for this. It's not to be mean or anything like that. It's to basically ensure that I'm giving you the proper attention.
Right. No, it absolutely makes sense. And ultimately, especially when you're thinking of it from a business perspective, as we're talking about business boundaries, every person who requests your services isn't necessarily a customer. So I know sometimes people think, well, you just lost out on business. No, that's not the kind of business that I want. You shouldn't want people who are going to be, if you're that aggravating to just get the idea and the content over, that to me is a good picture of how you'll be as a client, and I'm okay. If you can't follow instructions at that point, and it is what it is, and I get it. And sometimes I think it just is when we are friends with people, again, they'll message us and they'll be like, hey, and then I know I saw somebody who's like, oh, I was wondering why you didn't reply, but you know what? That makes sense. Cool. Let me use the right people. What you said, I'll always ask me when I was doing makeup, like just go in my DMs and whatever, and I'd be like, here, email me here. So it doesn't get lost over the sea of memes and stuff that my friends send, because that's what we do there. I think when I do more content creation, social media stuff, I am a little bit more mindful of like the reply and stuff, because maybe someone is asking something. But I started to be that when people keep asking me like, oh, where'd you get that? And I'm like, if I spend time creating this content, meaning I took the time to tag everyone who I think is appropriate. If I'm telling you, if you want to find more information, always. If I tell you, if you want more information, click this link to go to the video to watch me. And everybody's like, no, you just want me to tell you and you want to avoid like seeing my video. But that is why I created this, to lead you here. Marketing, that I did that intentionally. And if you don't want to follow that, that means you're not the person out, because you just want me to keep repeating information that is out there. It's also just it's a symptom of our laziness problem that we have as Americans, but as people, that we just want everything right here. And we don't just, if we just like step back and you're like, oh, it's right there. It's literally just like right there. I'm like, I had somebody who just like, oh, I want this. I want to be able to follow you. And I'm like, the link is in the bio. But literally my caption says, to watch this, link is in the bio. It's not even complicated. And if you can't do that, then, because I'm a person who not only like, I think I put out content a lot, but I like to consume a lot. So I want to know like who I want to follow, especially as like we're wedding planning. So I'm clicking a bunch of links and trying to go like get information, because for me, I want to get the more information. If I want to become a customer, then I'm going to do that deep dive. And so I see many customers in that. If you really want to be an actual customer, you're going to do that work. Because if you're going to spend your money, ultimately that's what you want people to do. You're not going to spend your money based on this little thing. You're going to do it based on the structure that I have behind in terms of my business. And so
Yeah.
People who are going to be actual customers, they'll be okay. People will ultimately be okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like my clients that are like majority of my book cover clients, like they've already like started. Like I never really have a problem out of them. Like, you know, occasionally they'll shoot me something like a text message or something like that. I'm like, nah, you need to send that in an email because I'm not gonna remember to look at this text message. But for the most part, it's always the people who feel entitled to your time. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, like there are friends that I will make time for. Like, you know, like John hit me up one time about needing something like really quick. And I was able to do it like, you know, like that and everything like that. Like very quickly. But that's why like even with like the next boundary I set was like basically paying time for me to speak or to actually have that business conversation with me, because you want me to take a whole hour out of my day to talk to you about what's going on with your book cover project or your graphic design project. I can give you 15 minutes without charging, because like most times, like if it's like a quick question, you know, you need a quick answer, yeah, I can give you that. But if you want me to spend a whole hour looking through pictures with you or understanding your project, reading through some stuff, I'm sorry, like you're gonna have to pay for that, because of the fact I still have other stuff that I have to do throughout the day. That's basically just the way it is. And it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily me being that person like, oh no, you have to get on my schedule. Like I am busy. So you do have to get on my schedule.
People can say what you want. You know, I had an argument with a relative not too long ago about getting on my schedule. I got shit to do, and I am not sorry.
And even you're about to be even busier.
So much busier. And my thing is, I be on other people's schedule, and so I don't feel no kind of way about it. And I don't live. It is okay to be like, in my big age, I don't just have always the time to just be like, oh, just go with the flow. Mm-hmm. First of all, I've been a senior citizen since the beginning of time. So I'm always like, no, this happens at this time. It is who I am. And when I'm doing nothing, like this weekend, I am intentionally doing nothing. Mm-hmm. So if I decide to go against the grain and then add activity to my do nothing, so that's part of a new boundary that I'm creating in terms of scheduling rest. Mm-hmm. Like that is what I'm doing. And so I don't think people should feel any kind of way about needing to be on the schedule. Like I don't have time for that. I can't just drop this and go do that. I can't just get up and go do that all the time. And those instances that I do have the opportunity to do that, it'll be for me. Yeah. It'll be for you. Like if I decide like, I wasn't planning on doing this today, but I'm going to go run this errand, or I'm going to go, out and do this. It's going to be because I want to, mm-hmm. and not because someone else is trying to, it's on someone else's schedule or whatever, like because they want and they didn't plan for mm-hmm. it to happen. So I think that that's an important boundary. And I'm happy that you instituted that boundary professionally, because there was a time where I feel like I couldn't say anything because it's your business, but it was like annoying because I'm like, people will ask you like questions. You're like, oh yeah, I'm meeting with so-and-so to ask them this question about this and to help them because they're trying to start this project or they're doing X, Y, and Z. And it's supposed to be like 30 minutes and it would be like 3 hours and mm-hmm. you would be talking to the person. And I'm understanding the guidance that you're giving them, and knowing that they're not paying you for it. And also realizing it's a part of your personality to be helpful and nice. And I also get that everything doesn't have to be transactional from a monetary perspective.
Shoot, no, I'm saying right about nowadays.
I mean, but I get it doesn't
get paid for.
I get it doesn't always have to be that, right? And sometimes it's just like, and it will vary sometimes. Yeah. There are things that I will do for friends and not charge anything mm-hmm. because, and somebody else asked me to do it, and I'm absolutely going to charge. Like right now, Megan and I were joking because we're talking about starting our own event planning business. I don't know if we're joking or not, because we're just like really good at like we're super type A, and we're both like, when we want to do it, like, okay, this is a plan, do it, execute. Like she's more execution than me. I'm more plan. But we have really good ideas. And so we're like doing all this stuff, even though, you know, we're 1,000 miles away for her baby shower. And I'm like, one of my new tasks that I'm trying to learn how to do is learn how to do a balloon garland. We get like balloon, because it's expensive. But I'm like, but I could figure out how to learn how to do that and execute. And, you know, how much people pay for like, to do like, I mean, I know how much people pay for coordination services and and it's, you know, a lot of people like host their friends' baby showers, but it's different to actually be like, but I'm actually going to like make sure I have all these key players to do X, Y, and Z and really plan this event and make it a thing and all of that. What?
I'm trying to figure out what a balloon girl.
You know, it's the balloon decoration. You know,
the arc?
It's not necessarily an arc. It can be a garland. Like when they like, so this is an arc like this. But a garland can be just like at the top and come down and then be on the floor.
Oh,
like that.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So like thinking about stuff like that, and it is our friendship, our relationship is what is like, yeah, I will do all this. And it's, you know, from me to you, because I love you, you know, and putting all this planning. And by the same token, her, like for wedding, it's the same thing, right? Like, so where someone else was just like, I want you to plan this event for me. And it would be like, like, I'm not going to be this detailed and in depth looking for stuff. And so relationships. So I get sometimes I've had friends who wanted me to like, I would be on the phone with them, teaching them how to do eyeshadow and stuff like that. Where I'm like, you know, otherwise it needs to be a class, or you just go on YouTube and learn how to do it, which is fine, right? Because there's that's the thing. There are plenty of free resources for people. And oftentimes there are instances where you show like, hey, I'm going to show you how to do this for free. But you don't have to go to this, because maybe it's me. Like I tell people, like, some people are like, I would love to do a one-on-one thing with you or show you makeup. That's going to cost you. But there are videos that I've done previously, you know, on my YouTube channel where you can learn. Maybe I'll do something where I show you how to do it my method. But if you want me to do it in this capacity and then go into a separate space and time, you know, time and do this, that's going to cost you. But there are free resources. And I think sometimes having to explain that to people, like the time matters. It takes time to do things and so like instituting that boundary. So I think that I'm happy for you. You know, he's updated this calendar, got my calendar looking all crazy because we share a calendar. So I get all of your the notifications. So I'll be like, whoo, when's the next thing I got to do? Because none of this is me.
Remember, my stuff used to just be bare, but like also like when I started working with my new supervisor, like I didn't have any free range over like the classes I could take or classes I could pick to monitor. So like I had to basically schedule in those classes, which had me all over. Like this past week.
Yeah, you were everywhere.
It was a lot. But that's another boundary I set, even just for myself at work. Like now that I'm in class at my job for UX design, like I'm getting certified as a UX designer. I said I'm only working Tuesdays and Thursdays, monitoring those classes. I can't do much more than that because of the fact, like, I still have to save time for homework. I still have to save time for my actual class that I have to be in. And even though it's like a part-time class, like, you know, that class is like, it's a lot. But at the same time, like I still have to save enough time to, like if I need to if somebody schedules any time with me, or if I need to design anything. Weekends, I'm not doing anything because like that is my time to basically recuperate and rest or do something that I actually want to do or spend time with you, which more than likely that just happens. But
I mean, no, that's real, because especially with, you know, me having a new job and increasing my commute time and not having the flexibility I had of the tenure at my last job where I was like, yeah, I'll come in like when I want and work from home and do like that. Not having that, like, and still trying to just do all the things that are important to me and, you know, staying on top of like my workouts in the evenings, because that's when I have time. We really have to be a lot more intentional about time together, and it's really going to be concentrated probably in the weekend. And even that has to be like, okay, because the weekend is the time that we have free, so to speak. So it's not only time together, but it's the time for us separately to do the things that we want to do for ourselves, right? So it's like, okay, I still want to work out some weekends. There are still times where I'm like, oh, like yesterday, like I need to get my nails done, like, because I can't do any of that during the week anymore. So so that's why, like, you know, we talk about boundaries and schedules. Like, we still will have to schedule time with one another. Yes, there's organic time we'll just naturally spend together because we're in the house together, because, you know, we share a bed, like all that. There's just times like in passing. But now with me being out of the house now, which is something that we haven't had to experience in our relationship. So it's going to be different, because even when pre-COVID, I worked less than 10 minutes from the house. So I came home almost every day for lunch. I could come home after work to change before I went to the gym if that was the case. You know, I was home a lot more. And then COVID, we were home a lot. And even since going back into the office, I still maybe 2 days a week, maybe stayed the entire time. But most of the time I could come home early or I'd leave later and things like that. But now we're getting to a space where when I leave, you're more than likely still asleep by the time I come home. And depending on the day of the week, you're in class or whatever. So, you know, our weeks are going to be filled with our work. And so sometimes, we're going to have to schedule time to be together and to be like, okay, we're going to watch this movie or we're going to go here or whatever on the weekend. Because even the weekend, even like no work, like for me, and trying to make sure that I'm still on top of all my, content and influencer stuff, that's weekend. Like that's not during the day, because everything is shifting where I don't have time to do that during the day, at least not now. It could change once I'm more comfortable in my role and all that kind of stuff. But right now it's like, I don't have the space to do that. So all that just to say, like, it's important to have that boundary, even with yourself, and saying, okay, I'm going to do this during this time. I'm going to do this during this time. And I love that you were like, okay, I'm not working on the weekends. Like, you know, I'm not going to be doing this job and this job on the weekends. I'm going to, you know, prioritize my rest and myself and whatever to do that. Because we tend to work on the weekends, even if it's not like our jobs, right? But that's just a condition of being an adult, right? You can't necessarily not go grocery shopping. You can't necessarily. And then, you know, you think when you're a parent, you don't get that. You're going to have to, and then they're going to be in your face. They're not going to be in school. And you got to do whatever activities they have. So you'll never necessarily off. But I love the idea of, I was listening to Jay Shetty's podcast On Purpose, and he had this whole, I need to listen to this episode again, about rest. And he talked about scheduling rest. And one of the things that he started to institute was at least one weekend every month is just dedicated to rest. He's like, whether it be Friday to Sunday, whether it just be Saturday and Sunday, depending on what you can do, what your lifestyle is, just rest. And what that looks like for you, right? Because rest doesn't mean like I'm just sitting here all day doing nothing. It might, but it also could be like, I'm just going to sit here and read this weekend. It could mean that normally my weekend looks like this, but now it's not going to look like that. Like this, or maybe it's just a day. It's like, I'm going to do everything I need to do on Saturday. So Sunday, I can legitimately just sit and do nothing. Or, you know, maybe it is going to the pool. Maybe it is like going to the beach, you know. And then you talk about like every 3 months, if you can do like an extended weekend. And like, he's talked about all those kinds of things. And then like every 6 months, taking like a week or whatever he said, like, and then like every year or something, like make sure you take a week where you're just like off, which makes me really excited about the new job, because at least coming up at the end of my winter break is 3 weeks long. So I have a 3-week winter break, and I am really, really, really looking forward to that rest. That's not coming for 6 months, but I'm looking forward to it already. It makes me want to do something because I can and not have to work. So it's going to be awesome. Okay. We're still talking about boundaries. Did you want to? So the only other thing, I guess, or one of the only other things I want to talk about boundaries, that I think it's important is in familial relationships, and like setting boundaries just in terms of like what aspects, and in friendships too, what aspects you open your life up to people, how you open your life up to people, and like setting those boundaries of things they, can and cannot say. And I think I mentioned this before, maybe in the last episode we did, but one boundary that I have started to institute, which I will admit I was very hard with it, because it's a boundary that I set out of frustration when people are talking about like having kids. It is a boundary that I'm like very like, not just line in the sand, but stakes with barbed wire wrapped around this. Like unless I bring it up, and then it can be very surface level. Like it could just be like when you have kids, like, yeah, when you have kids. But if I ever say like, what if I don't have kids? People should just like accept that. And it is a line that I've had to really go through with like my own mother, where I've had to be like, we're not talking about it. Like when I want to talk about it and when it's time to talk about it, we'll talk about it. And it has been one rough, because I get it, right? This is my parent. She birthed me. She feels very entitled to have say, and she wants to be a grandparent. So she feels very entitled to be able to be in that space in my life. And I feel very strongly she is wrong about that. Yeah. Like I get it. Right. And I get the excitement. And so I don't want, like my mom, your mom, I don't want them to ever feel like they're not going to have a say in, like we don't value their opinion or their thoughts or their wishes in terms of anything. Right. Like I don't want them to ever feel that way. But I'm also very like, we're adults and we're not young adults anymore either. To be able to get to a point where I'm very confident in a lot of the things that I believe, and that is that. And we don't get to talk about when I'm having kids, and because if I do want to bring it to you I'm struggling with this because when we try, it's not happening, or it's happening, or I do get pregnant, or whatever. Like that is the opportunity. But to say like, to try to press it, like we got to start having kids now, or what are we waiting on? Like that is literally no one's business besides ours. It is no one's business.
I normally just don't answer.
No one. And so, yeah, you don't answer, but I get more of the pressure because I'm apparently the housing unit for these, children that are in the future or whatever. So it questions, and I don't think people understand like how it feels to be questioned about that. So I have a hard boundary, especially when people tell me things like, you gotta have kids.
Or you're not getting any younger.
Or you're not getting any younger. I know when I was born. I hear my knees creak every morning when I get out of bed. I know how old I am. I don't need anyone to tell me that. And the other thing, especially when you just meet people, because it happened with someone I had just met, and it's like, you don't know me. You don't know if I'm infertile. You don't know if I've had a miscarriage. Like people don't know that, and they just feel very entitled. And so I'm very like clear about setting those boundaries about what I allow outside of the kids conversation, about what I allow people to say to me. Like, I don't think people feel real comfortable to say stuff and get real personal.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not personal. And it's just like, Why do you feel so comfortable saying things like that? There are even my best friends where sometimes I feel like I want to say something and I have to hey, I want to have this conversation and I want to know where your comfort level is before we get into it, because this is what I'm thinking and I'm your friend and I love you. And I want to explain to them where I'm coming from before I say something. Mm-hmm. And these are people who I have known my entire life, and I still operate in I want to make sure you're comfortable before we talk about this. So I don't get why other people just feel like they should just say whatever.
I felt I was feeling like a type of way when everybody kept asking me when you getting married or when you gonna pop the question. I'm like, yo,
I know you're getting mad frustrated.
I like at first, it's cool, like, everybody's like because like, the relationship is fresh and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, we're in a relationship right now, and then it's like the more I'm planning it and everything like that, I'm like, yo, stop asking me. Stop asking, period. Because it's already hard enough to like keep this under wraps with like a whole bunch of other different people. And you keep saying like, when are you guys going to win? Like, he should probably just go ahead and pop the question. I'm like, chill. Like, chill the F out. So, I don't know. Like, I know there's like been quite a times where I basically had to just step away from the computer, or I just won't answer.
Yeah.
But like I get that part, especially the whole baby asking question. Like, I know you feel it more than I do because you're housing, room and board and all that good stuff. We can talk about that. I mean, but it's like. And it doesn't necessarily affect me as much. It only affects me because it affects you. Mm-hmm. Because I know you don't want to have that conversation, or you don't want to like always keep having people ask that, or like people be getting too familiar and whatnot.
Exactly. I just feel like y'all know how babies are made, right? It's sex. For the most part. I mean, you can do it in a tube nowadays, right? Test tube, baby. Oh, baby's kids outside. Anyway, right? But like, it's sex, and it involves our private parts, so to speak, right? And it's like penis, vagina, and it's like, and if you put that into people, I was like, do you really want to talk about my vagina? And then people are like, oh my God, exactly. That's what you're doing. When you're asking about when we're having kids, you're asking like, do you want to talk about his penis and my vagina? And people are like, oh my God, I'm uncomfortable. That's how I feel. You are initiating a conversation about my private parts. You see how that's weird? Exactly. It's weird. So stop doing it. It is a totally different shift if I'm saying, like when we have kids or what I want, and when people ask like, do you want kids? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, sometimes people will say like, do you guys want to have them soon? And we're like, yeah. But my shift always now is, yeah, but we're getting married. We want, right. I would like to make it down the aisle sans baby in uterus, because we got the open bar package. I want to drink real liquor at my wedding. I don't want to have a mocktail because I got a baby in my uterus. So that's what we're doing now. We're trying to organize our lives. We have, and sometimes from my perspective in setting that boundary, it feels like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people get that too. I have multiple degrees. I'm fairly successful. I happen to be in a very loving, healthy relationship with someone that I love. I think I'm a good friend, a good daughter, a good sister, cousin. I enjoy my life fighting whitey every day because racism is just here, I make it through fairly unscathed, taking care of my mental health, working on taking care of my physical health. Why am I not enough like that? And that's what it makes me feel. And maybe it's me internalizing things that are not there, but that's what it is. It's like, oh, but you could be so much better if you were also a mother. Because my thing is, what if I said I didn't want to? What if people don't know? What if I don't want kids? Kids are expensive. You got to feed them every day because there are laws against not doing it.
Too, that's the first thing I asked my mom. Like, but she's starting to reply now. Like, yes, I got grandbaby money. I'm like,
my mama still don't got the answer. She still ain't got baby money. So she ain't got grandbaby money. I think that's the other part. It's not just money, but it's time. Yeah. Right?
Oh, shoot.
I'm already tired. All of my best friends, most people in my inner circle have children. Mm-hmm. All of my best friends have children. Some multiple. One of my best friends is pregnant right now. And I've seen it. I've been there when we were young and trying to figure it out. Now they're older. I see how much time and energy they take away. I'm a person who really loves her life. I like being able to have time to myself, doing things. I still want to look like me. I don't want to have to be looking like I'm tired and I hate life because I'm a parent, because, sometimes it's like, oh, the kid comes first and like, I'm not trying to be that mom. That requires a certain amount of money. So even when people think they got grandbaby money, no, because I still want to live the life that I've come accustomed to live. And I ain't trying to have less for me because Junebug's over here. So, little Pookie gonna be here, but mama still gotta have her stuff too. Mama gotta have a life too, Jody.
Gone somewhere.
So it's really, I think about that. And again, you never know if you can or what that's like. And it's not something that when it happens, if it happens, I'm really excited to like share that aspect of it, but I don't want to talk about that like until we get there and until we're not in a space where we're like that. It is on our radar, but it is not like we are actively working on that. And when we do, then we can decide how much of that we want to share or whatever the case is. Y'all want to hear about the sex?
I'm like, well, no. I don't think it's
like last night. I think I did it.
Oh my God.
See how weird that episode is gonna be, or that conversation would be.
Like, yeah, like I definitely like that'd probably be something I would do, but
I know,
or something that I would say.
It would
like, oh yeah, that was you remember that SpongeBob gift that it was sending out with the splats?
That's so disgusting.
Exactly.
Ew, don't send that to people. That
I did already.
That is the most disgusting.
I mean, they asked, I'm like,
maybe, right? So I just think like when it comes to our future together, I want people to just be talking about our wedding and our marriage, because that is the focal point, and paying for that and getting that done and just really instituting that boundary. Also, like I said, like with family and like what we can talk about, like that's it. Like, and so I just be like, even like I told my mom now, she's funny because she'll be like, well, I would talk about like she's passive aggressive. It's her love language. Like I would talk about grandchildren, but you gonna get mad. And I just be like, as long as you know, because also my love language is sarcasm and you created me. So she just like, can't stand you. Fine. Sit me then. So that's me and my mom. So she'll be like, all right, little girl, you're getting smart. I'll be like, I'm just saying. Because like she thinks that if she goes with that whole thing, that then I'm like, I'm your kid. So no, that's not going to work on me. You birthed me. And we can talk about that birth because it happened. That's it. But we can't talk about anything else until it happens. And, I want, my mom to be involved, and I want my mom and your mom. I want them because, it'll be exciting. I know it's really exciting for them and all that. But like, let's cross that bitch when we get to it.
Like we literally, like babies aren't in the immediate future right now. Like we're trying to have the wedding. We're actually trying to get married first. Like. And
we're doing good because we are like very far into the planning. especially considering we've only been engaged for a month and a half, barely a month and a half.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I mean, it's honestly, it's still a little bit interesting and weird to me to like be in this position because like I've never really been in this position before. Like, you know, like me and John, Kevin, or Kivanda, like none of us really talk about the day that we're gonna get married and stuff like that. Like, you know, it's not the normal conversation. Now it's like, yeah, man, you know, I'm gonna have to do that toast at your wedding and everything like that. I'm like, when did this conversation change?
Yeah, because now it's actually happening, right? It's not, you know, it's like that. Now for me, it's beyond just the Pinterest boards of like, oh, when we, blah, 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 blah. It's like actually happening. I do have the benefit of having people in my friend group that have already done this. I've supported them in their journeys. So I'm excited about that. But I'm glad to go into all of this while being in a headspace that I'm like setting healthy boundaries and like, I don't feel bad about it. Like just being like, hey, this is my time. This is what I want. And it actually makes me more aware and teaches me how to respect other people's boundaries. Right?
Yeah.
And not always question. Sometimes it is, I don't have to question people's boundaries. I may ask questions to clarify that is in fact a boundary, right? Like when some people say, well, like, no, I don't want that. And then I'll be like, well, is that just like a temporary thing like today? Or is that like a boundary that you're setting? Is that like, and then it's like, all right, let me know. So I know, because I know how it feels when people like want to be like, well, why are you doing it? And it's like,
and keep picking at it.
You're right. And sometimes I want to know. And the other part is I want to know, I sometimes have to respect the questions because again, if it's a big shift in our relationship and you're not used to me doing that. Right.
Right.
And for whatever reason, sometimes, and I think some people feel like, oh, they don't owe anybody an explanation. And I'm like, yeah, you don't necessarily owe anybody an explanation, but oftentimes it's nice. And when you're in relationship with people, like if you want the relationship to be strong, then yeah, you should give them one. You could not, and you could mess up the relationship. Like, or even if it's like a friendship, if I've allowed my friend to interact with me in this way all the time and I want to have the boundary and then I have to just tell them like, hey, I know you're used to doing this and I know we've done this always, but it doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me comfortable. I don't want to do it anymore. So if I want our friendship to be intact, I do owe you that. Now, if I don't care about our friendship, then all right, fine. Then I could be like, I don't gotta tell you nothing, and you just gotta respect. Yeah, then it'll fuck up our friendship. So like, if that's what you want, okay.
I don't know. I think like I've only had that situation happen. Let's see. It happened with John one time, and it wasn't him directly, but at the same time, like our friendship really grew from that. Because let's see. His like the people we were hanging around and everything like that, they was cracking Mexican jokes and whatnot, and I'm like, you know, like y'all know I'm half, so it's like, come on now, like you over here talking about people like that one are my family, and then really you're talking about people who basically are really good. They were, I think that's when that was when Obama wasn't president then. But like the detainee and being locked up and everything like that. So that wasn't happening then. But it felt bad because like of the fact like, you know, I'm over here hearing these jokes and everything like that. And I'm like, I was literally getting to the point where I was ready to swing on somebody. And John took me off to the side, like took me outside and everything like that and asked me what was wrong. And I was like, bro, I can't take it no more. Like these jokes got to stop. Like, come on now. And so like he literally just like, yeah, man, he apologized and everything like that. And then next thing you know, it's like everybody else just stopped because he said something. So I'm grateful to have people who even just respected that boundary, or that's I would say the one time where that could have made or break like a friendship for me and everything like that. Like anybody else, like when it comes to like politics and everything like that, like sometimes it's just easier just to set them off to the side.
Yeah. And I get that. And I'm a person who like I can cut off. I don't care. We share DNA. It don't make me no never mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also like I'm very open to having conversations with people to say like where I do realize that intent does not. What am I trying to say? Like intent doesn't negate harm.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People think, well, I didn't mean to. It don't mean you ain't hurt me.
Right.
And so it's important to say that just because you didn't mean to and acknowledge that, yeah, you didn't mean to, but you did. And so sometimes I have this conversation and people are being like, I didn't even realize like where, and sometimes people don't even realize that the way they think and why that's an issue. And so again, when I'm invested in the relationship or even if it doesn't have to be a best friend, it could just be someone who I don't think they necessarily mean. And so I've had that with people like coworkers, like we met and I'm like, I think you think this and this is not what that is, and let's talk about how that makes me feel and where I stand in that and what my boundary is. And then you see where they are and they're like, oh, okay. And then you know learn. And I'm almost always willing to go that route with someone, especially when someone I have to interact with, whether it be at work or somebody who I have a relationship with, as opposed to just writing people off. And I think a lot of people are like, well, I gotta explain nothing. And it's easier. It's not. It's hard to live your life that way. And I've tried it. It's hard to live life that way. It's easier to try to have a level of understanding. But it doesn't mean I'm going to come back on my boundary. Because like I said, when we were talking about the baby conversation and a friend brought a friend to our engagement barbecue and he mentioned it. And I will admit that I was very like direct and like, don't talk about my uterus. And I was just like, but he didn't just stop talking. I had just met him and he was like, well, no, like you got to have kids. And I didn't know that I had just met this man. And that's when, mind you, I had already been just the last few days of people. I had just argued with my uncle about it. So I was to hear with the conversation at that moment where I'm like celebrating us getting married and people want to just talk about having kids. And so I was like, hey, we're not talking about, you don't get to talk about marriage. So I yelled at him. And so then later, one of my best friends, like Evie was just like, yeah, I felt bad for him because you stopped for him. And I was not apologizing. I said, I hear what you're saying. And I don't apologize because I was already upset at that point. And when I said it the first time, he decided he was going to still question it. And it was because he was probably used to it because that's how our society has set people up to think that they can be that invasive. And I was letting him know where my boundary was. And when I said it at a louder tone, he got it and he stopped because he didn't just stop when I first said it. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, no, we're not talking about it. He was like, well, no, you got to hey, that he heard. And I don't apologize for it. So and even in my friendship, I'm like, I get you. I said, so I hear what you're saying. You feel bad for him. I don't. He shouldn't have. So I'm staying in my boundary and I mean it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And maybe you'll warn everyone else to not tell people. And you can feel this way as my friend. And this is me explaining to you why I feel that way and why. And even in that relationship, I think she was used to me being like, okay, well, maybe. And I was just like, no, I'm not apologetic and I'm not going to be. And you'll waste your breath if you try to explain to me why I should. And we can talk about something else because I'm not talking about this anymore. That is, in fact, my boundary. He crossed it even when I gave him opportunity to not. I gave him opportunity to not. And he not once crossed it because I said, hey, he was just like, well, no, and I'm trying to tell him, I don't want to talk to you, stranger at that point about this.
No, I think the last thing that I can remember, or the thing that I can say about even just boundaries, like I had to actually have this with my mom, have this conversation with my mom. Because like my mom is one of those people who talks about karma and stuff like that. And, being nice people, even though they're acting a fool and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't care. Only because so I told you about this. So when I went home, my mom had received a call from Eric and basically said that like there's some negative energy in the house and this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, he called it out. It was my ex's stuff in the basement that I had totally forgot about. And I was just going to take it to the trash and everything like that. I'm like, oh, I forgot all about this stuff. Like, just going to take it to the trash because I'm over here thinking like maybe it's like the Christmas tree or whatever. So I was like, take it to the trash. It's been like some years. So I started taking it to the trash, and then like I was like, she was asking me what I was doing with it. I was like, I'm taking it to the trash. She's like, no, like she might want this stuff. I'm like, I don't care. And so she wanted me, like at first she wanted me to load it in the car and take it to her. I'm like, I'm not going to go see her. I'm not going to actually lay eyes on her. I'm not going to the house. I'm not even getting in the car. Either it's going in the trash or you're taking it. My mom was like, you don't want that kind of karma and this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, karma just gonna have to bite me in the ass on this one because I'm not doing it.
I don't even think that's how karma works because had Eric and I had that, it would have just been sitting, and it's also been sitting in there for years at this point. You already know my stance on it. It's been sitting in there for years, so there was no missing. It just created space for messy.
Mm-hmm. And clearly it did, but at the same time, I was like, she just kept trying to. Like, she was trying to dig into, like, why I didn't want to. I'm like, I don't want to see her. I don't want to have any conversation with her. It's going in the trash if I'm handling it. Mm-hmm. So she, she's like, I'll take it. I was like, okay, cool. So I loaded everything in the trunk of her car and my mom's car and everything like that. And she just kept, like, inching towards the door and moving slow and everything like that. Because, like, it was starting to get late. And like my mom still had to take me back to the hotel. Like my mom stays all the way south and I still had to go back downtown. Now my ex stays like closer to downtown. And I was like, I will wait here until you get back. I will turn on that TV, which I definitely did. She basically left, took her stuff. There was some issue with my ex and her guy and everything like that. And they got locked out of the house and everything. Either way, it just took a longer time. So finally, my mom made it back. And then she took me all the way back downtown to the hotel and everything like that. I was like, I am not budging on this. And I think that was like one of the few times that my mom has like seen me do that. Because normally, like, say if it's like a book cover thing, like, yeah, like, oh, just go ahead and get it done. But this is just something I did not want to do. This is something I had no interest in doing. Like I said, all this stuff would have just went into the trash. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful to even just express that boundary or express like I'm not doing something that I don't want to do, especially if it's going to cause even much more confusion on anybody's end, or if it's going to cause like an argument or stress, because that's what I'm trying to get out of my life. Is stress.
So you're used to like acquiescing to people's requests because you don't want, like, you're like, I don't want to seem like a bad guy, or because I just want to not talk about it anymore. And I have the same feeling, like I don't want to talk about it anymore, but I'm gonna walk away. And and people have their my thing is people have their perceptions about me, but I'm very like, when I say something, like I mean it. Mm-hmm. I mean it. And I don't like when people question, like, oh, and it doesn't mean I can't help people or I can't, like, okay, if you say something, I'm like, yeah, like when we're, if I say like, I didn't come to my own party to work. I'm not here to do it. So my mom was getting mad, like, we're doing all this for you. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the point, right? The point is you're doing all this for me. Mm-hmm. And you can't guilt me into helping you carry stuff or do whatever for a party that you're throwing for me. Because if you got to do all that, you should not have done it for me.
Right.
Because it should be like, if I'm seeing you do all stuff and I'm like, okay, let me help. But I purposely came late and everything. So I got dressed. came at the time we're supposed to start. So I didn't have to work.
Right.
You should have recruited the people that you needed to do this if you were going to throw this thing to this scale. And so Katala was like, and I'm like, I'm not trying to be an ass, but if this was the case, we should have just ordered pizzas and sat in the house. Because if it's all of this and you're going to get mad at me for not wanting to work in my own party, which I feel like should be the very least. I don't want to work at my party. Because if that was the case, I could have thrown my own party and done it. And I would have hired people to do the work that I'm not going to do. So, I mean, this is why it's really important for me that I have a partner that understands me and that understands the boundaries and like who I am. And then you were just like, he goes to my mom like, hey, if you need self-care, just come to me. Mm-hmm. She's good. Because my mom was just legit going to get mad at me.
Yeah.
And she was just going to have to be. And so that's me. My mom was getting mad and she was just going to have to be mad. But I did carry one thing. But
yeah, I didn't want y'all to have an issue. That's why I basically stepped in, because I'm like, if she needed like hands on deck and stuff like that, like to bring some boxes down or something like that, I will do it. Because like I think it wasn't too many people there.
Yeah, there was not a lot of people there.
So
I'm like, I had on a legit dress dragging to the floor and sandals. Like, you want me like carry boxes downstairs? I'm about to bust my stuff.
Right. So that's when I was like, I basically went to your mom. I was like, if you need anything done and you're about to ask her to do it, don't do that. Just ask me. Yeah. I will do it. Because
my whole thing is, even in that, in planning, like you have all these ideas, that would sometimes mean like, hey, who needs to be here early to help with this stuff? So then you have to communicate that with them. So I have issue with like, don't plan something and then be like, oh, it's for you. And then you want, when I'm like, because you expect me to work it, but, and it doesn't make me, and I think this is the picture, it doesn't make me any less appreciative for what you've done and for the effort that you put in. I'm super appreciative of it. Also I don't want to help. And that people see that and they're like, oh, she thinks da. And I had to stop caring that people start having these misconceptions, honestly, about me. Because if I know that I'm going to go and I'm going to work this event, even if it's like, hey, the barbecue's happening, we need your help to set up, then I would have gotten dressed there. We would have come earlier. Yeah. I wouldn't have done my makeup. I would have done all the setup and then went and showered and got ready at my mama's house. Like I would have done it, or went back to the hotel and got ready. But I came just to eat and be cute and celebrate, have my sash on. So at that point, no, I don't want to work. And so I think sometimes when you set that, like, this is what I'm doing, then, and I carry like one thing, but if you ask me like go back and forth, I'm not going to have it. And so I got to this place, even with a relationship with my mom, where like what I say, I mean. And I think it just helps kind of solidify, like, I'm your baby. I have to mom, I'm your baby. Mm-hmm. I am not a baby. And so you do not get to dictate what I do. And when I say, and I have to look at my mom in the eye and say, I love you. But when I say no, I mean no. Mm-hmm. And you have to deal with that. And you don't get to question it. And if you're going to try to argue me down, we just need to take a pause and not talk for a minute. So we can go our separate corners, cool off, and then we can come back and talk about something else. Because I'm still not talking about this. I was like, but I think sometimes our parents have to hear that. They have to hear the, like, and so now is when my mom started saying, I know, you're my baby, not a baby. Okay. Now, and it doesn't mean that I won't do things but I need you to get on the good foot. Get on the good foot. I see you making those strides with your mom. I know. And I get it. Your mom is a strong personality. It actually, I know it's gonna sound weird. I know people say like, oh, you usually you marry your parent or whatever. I see the instances where your mother and I are very different, but I also see you like strong type A personality, and I get it. If that's your mother raised you as a single parent, and so that's what you've been around, and so I get it. It makes sense. I mean, I'm a lot like my mother in that regard. And so I understand, but it's like really interesting it honestly makes me more aware of like making sure that I'm asking you questions and that I'm getting your actual thoughts and opinions on something. And like sometimes I'm like, no, I really want this, and so I'm gonna push this. But sometimes I'm like, all right, if it's not that big a deal and you're more adamant, like you don't want to, then I'm like, all right, except when it's time to like dress up. Sometimes you gotta do that, and then that's just it. Sometimes, but I've been better. Like most times I just let you do what you want to do. Sometimes I'm gonna be like,
you
no.
Let me do what I want to do.
Like I don't give you shit about it.
Okay.
Like with your clothes or whatever. Most times I just let you live your best life. I do try to tell you variety. I even help you variety in t-shirts. Just get more. That's it. But I don't try to like, and sometimes I do and you appreciate it. Tell me I'm lying.
Thanks, guys, for joining. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Not you whispering. The people can't hear you.
I am this close to the microphone.
They can't hear you, though. Can you hear them, people? They said no.
They said yes.
What you say?
No.
Not you mumbling. Not your bottom lip didn't even move.
You're not lying.
I am not lying. All right. Do you have anything else? I need to use the restroom.
Me too. Thank God for 2 bathrooms.
I just got to go number 1.
Don't be putting my business out there.
I did. I just said I just got to go number 1. That's it. But also thank God for 2 bathrooms. Thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode of If It Isn't Love podcast. We will be back next week. We're working on consistency. If you're not already, make sure that you're following us on social media. At this point, just follow us on Instagram at If It Isn't Love podcast. We're working on the rest. Make sure you can see if you're listening to this on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, know that you can also view this on the YouTubes. So we're there. Any last minute thoughts?
Get a wedding planner if you're planning a wedding.
Yes, get a wedding planner or get a very organized bride. You have both.
I do.
So you're awesome. All right, guys. Until next time. Bye.